So, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Front Face Lock podcast. I'm your host Ryan, and with me, as always, is the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend, Vinny. And today, Vinny, did you say something, or were you just?
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's up, guys?
Today, we are joined by a very special guest, the man known as the world's most dangerous announcer, Gary Michael Cappetta, former WWF, AWA, NWA, and WCW ring announcer. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm psyched. I have a feeling that you're going to ask me some real challenging questions, so I'm ready. Whatever you want.
Nice.
Now,
Welcome to the show. Appreciate you being on.
Thank you, sir.
I mean, when we think of early classic WCW, like what it sounds like to me, it's Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, and Gary Michael Cappetta.
Yeah.
That's classic WCW.
Yeah, well, that was the first half of the 90s. I actually left in May of 95, and they started Nitro in September of that year. So I left before they boomed, but I still had a great time with them.
Personally, I think when Nitro started, it kind of, I mean, everybody thinks it went uphill. I kind of think it leveled off, and, you know, as bad as some of the gimmick matches were in the early 90s when you were there, it's still, that's classic.
Yeah, they didn't have the ding-dongs, you know? We can claim the ding-dongs.
There was some ding-dongs, which is one of the questions we do want to get to, but I know you have some things that you did. You were a screenwriter of Fall for the Dream. You wrote and directed and starred in Body Slams and Beyond, and you were the writer of Body Slams, Memoirs of a Wrestling Pitchman.
That's right. My background is education, and I understand that people absorb information in different ways. Some people like to watch podcasts. Some people like to listen to them. Some people like to read a book, and some people like to go to a theater for a live experience. So the whole idea was, especially with my stage show, was to give the fans an alternative way of, learning about my experiences. And because they were there live and in person, they were able to ask whatever questions that they were wondering about from my 40 years.
Is this a show that you still do currently?
I haven't been able to, this past year with the flu, but it's still there, and I'm open to, sometimes promoters will bring me in, and I'll do the show either like the night before their wrestling event, and then I'll stay over and announce the main event of their wrestling show. So it's, I'm open for bookings.
Very excited to hear when it starts up again, because we definitely you got 2 tickets right here that we'll be buying. So
Absolutely.
And I was right down the road here, guys. I was in Asbury Park.
Oh, no shit.
I did a show. I did a show in Atlantic City. We're in New Jersey, all of us. So
yes,
for the people that are listening, I did a show. My first show was in Philadelphia, at a comedy club. So, but I don't usually like to do comedy clubs because people expect comedy when they go to comedy clubs. And while there were funny moments of the show, it's not a stand-up like comedy performance.
I've seen clips of it. I've watched a bunch of other shows you've been on. It sounds like something I'd really like to listen to, because there is something you mentioned in one of the podcasts I watched with you about how the Undertaker might not be the Undertaker without you.
Well, that's true. That was because of when he first came into WCW, his first TVs, now he was Mean Mark at the time, Mean Mark Callis. His first TVs were filmed in, I think it was Saginaw, Michigan. And at the end of the taping, and we did probably 2 or 3 weeks, so it was a long night. Most of the guys were gone by the end. It was the Steiner's home stomping ground, so they were going back to Detroit, and I think a bunch of the other guys were going back, and they were going to be, socializing at one of the places in the Detroit area. But I always liked to travel through the night, so I'd finish a show and hop in the car and drive through the night. And so I was in the next town, maybe 3 a.m, when I check into a hotel, and that's just how I liked, to roll. So at the end of that night, other than the guy that was in the main event, I didn't see anybody around. It was it was an old place. It was a dark place. It was a smoky place. And so I was taking off my tuxedo, and all of a sudden I hear from the corner, hey, who are you traveling with? And I was like stunned, like I didn't know anyone was in the room. And it was Undertaker. It was Mean Mark. And he was new. He didn't know anyone. He hadn't teamed up with anyone to travel. And I had an agreement in my contract where the company paid for all my expenses, and I also was allowed to travel alone. With the wrestlers, they had to travel 3 to a car, or the office wouldn't have paid for it. So I had a nice perk. So ultimately, I had no idea how he thought he was going to get to the next city, but he came with me, and that's how I got to know him. And through the week, I learned that he had an issue with Buzz Sawyer, who was one of the headliners. Ole Anderson was the booker at the time. They were old friends from way back, and Buzz Sawyer he was an idiot. He was stoned most of the time, and he was the kind of guy that especially for someone like myself who's not into confrontation, I just stayed away from him. I walked around him. If he said hello, I said hello. Otherwise, you never knew what was going to set him off. And as it turns out, little by little, because we traveled for the whole week, Indianapolis and a couple places in Ohio, and maybe Farmland, Indiana, a bunch of different cities. And the last city was Cincinnati. And through the week, he began opening up to me, Undertaker did. And I learned that down in Texas, when he wanted to get into wrestling, he joined Buzz Sawyer's wrestling school. And he paid him the tuition up front. And within a couple of weeks, Buzz had disappeared. He moved to California. Undertaker lost his money. He wasn't a rich guy, and he had borrowed the money from his brother. I think it was $2,500 or $3,000. So he had to bounce bars and work to pay back his brother, and still never got trained to wrestle. So he was itching for a fight, and if he had acted on what he said he wanted to do, which was to beat the piss out of Buzz Sawyer, he would have been gone. Ole would have fired him, and there would have never been at least it wouldn't have happened the way it did if he found another way around to the WWE and became the Undertaker.
He would have wound up being the gobbledygooker instead.
You never know.
That's a great story.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. I actually have I like the Undertaker a lot better than I did before now. Real quick, you've been around 40 years, your career. I needed to know, you're around legends, everybody in the wrestling world you've been around. But I saw a picture on the internet. It was you and Bruno Sammartino and Andre the Giant. What was it like being around someone like Andre the Giant? Obviously larger than life, and just, we've heard so many stories, but we haven't been able to talk to someone who was actually in his presence. What was he like? What was it like being around him, that atmosphere?
He was very easygoing. He liked me. So he either liked, there were a few people he didn't like.
Right.
But most of the people he did like, and he would, every one of us that he liked, he called boss. Hey boss, how you doing? And I would get to a show, and he'd be playing either cards or cribbage. He was usually there early. Arnold Skolin at the time was one of Vince Sr.'s agents, so he would usually bring him in, and so he was cool. He was, that picture that you're talking about was taken at a live Clash of the Champions in Atlanta, Georgia, at Center Stage. It was a Clash of the Champions to celebrate 25 years of the NWA on TBS. And after the broadcast, there's a bar that's a club that's attached to center stage. So they had an after party there, and that's where it was taken. And so I went over to say hi to Bruno and to Andre, and George Napolitano, world famous photographer, was walking by. And I said, George, take a picture of us. And the first picture that was taken, which I have to find it. I have it, but I have to find it. Andre, as soon as we were like 3, 2, 1, and Andre takes his huge mitt and puts it over my face. So that was actually what you saw was the second picture that was taken. Okay. And yeah, I mean, I have to find that because it was classic.
That's awesome.
I kind of thought you were going to say he went right for your throat, because I know there's a lot of pictures of him with his hand on somebody's throat.
Yeah, no, he wouldn't do that to me.
So, like I said, we have covered a lot of your era WCW, one of which being Halloween Havoc 1991. Mm-hmm. With the creatures, the parts unknown, the weight unknown. To us, that's one of those things where you go, what the hell are they doing? Was there ever a match where you're just announcing the match? You know, you saying who the creature is, parts unknown. Is there ever a match you just get out of the ring and you go, what the fuck did I just announce? Like, are they doing?
Right.
Not really. You know, I knew what I was paid to do. You know, it wasn't, if they were going to do dumb things, I was separated from it, you know, in a way. I was really psyched when, and I think you would hear it in my voice when I was announcing, like the Flair Steamboat matches. When things were going well, I think you heard it, and in my voice. And when things weren't going well, I still tried to project all is well. You know, it was part of my job. I was sort of, you know, detached from some of the crap that they slung, but every promotion that you work for slings things that you cringe at. Every promotion, you know, when I worked with the WWF, you know, we had our like the Wolfman, and you know, there were different characters in every place that I went. So and part of it is the charm of wrestling, part of it is fun, and you know, but they did have their serious main events that sold the tickets. I think what you're referring to is more like window dressing, and sometimes it just didn't fit the window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you talk about those matches that, you know, they're all those main events, what is the main event or the match that you wish you would have been able to announce if that you hadn't?
I don't have any. I for the years that I was active, I was real happy with what I did. I mean, when you are an NWA, WCW announcer to announce the 3 Flair Steamboat matches, I mean, I left WWF about when WrestleMania was starting, so I wasn't even part of the company for the WrestleManias. My favorite series of matches to announce when I was with the WWF was when Superstar Billy Graham had just become champion, and Bruno Sammartino came back for his title, and we sold out the Philadelphia Spectrum, 19,500 people, 3 months in a row. Wow. So that was exciting. So from the different decades, those are the matches I look back at that I'm proud to have been associated with. But I don't have any regrets, because if I wasn't part of the promotion, then it really wasn't possible anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think when it, like, you know, not from a regret standpoint, because I mean, you've announced, you know, Sting, Luger, and Flair and Steamboat, like all those amazing matches, but did you ever look at somebody like the Fink? Like, was there ever a friendly rivalry between you guys? Because he got to announce like Andre and Hogan, WrestleMania 1. Like, were you friendly with the Fink at all, or was there anything going on there?
I was friendly with him, but we didn't see each other often. It was the same with Joe McHugh, who prior to the Fink announced the other TV show, because there was rarely a reason for two ring announcers to be in the same place at the same time. The only time I would see Howard was because he worked for The Office, was if he was at a show in a different capacity. Like there was one time where he was commentating on a Meadowland show with Gorilla Monsoon, and so I saw him there. And the last time that I saw him was at a convention in Monroe, New Jersey, Legends of the Ring, and he came over, said hello, and asked if it would be okay if we took a picture, and I'm happy that we did.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he was a good guy.
Now you bring up Gorilla Monsoon. I've heard you say in other shows he was your guardian angel.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Monsoon, I wouldn't have an announcing career.
What did he do for you? If you don't mind me asking, what did he do for you?
Oh, he got me started. It was a fluke that I announced to begin with. It wasn't something that I wanted to do or tried to do. It was just they needed an announcer one night. And I did not know. I just thought he was the wrestler. I didn't know that he was one of the part owners of the WWF. So
I didn't know that either.
It's something I know now.
Yeah. Up until Vinnie took over and took everything over. So he was one of Senior's partners, and he owned was 20 or 25% of the promotion.
Oh wow!
And he was also the producer of their TV show. So he called me after I graduated from college a couple months later and asked me if I would consider announcing his shows, because in New Jersey, Eastern Pennsylvania, Delaware, wherever there were WWF shows there, he was the booker. Okay. So he brought me in, and for 2 years I got, I learned how to do what I do. And there were high schools and convention halls and Fort Dix and like all the small arenas. And then 2 years later, since he was the producer of TV, he brought me in and I started announcing the weekly A show for the WWF. If it wasn't for him, if he didn't bring me in to do that, I wouldn't have had a career. And remember, there were no independent shows. There was no competition.
Yeah.
Well, there were independent shows in the Latino barrios, but they weren't any competition for McMahon. Right. So it was a gift, because as long as I was doing it, no one else would gain any experience. Howard started in New Haven, so he had an entirely different part of the WWF territory. So we never stepped on each other's toes. We were just in different places. And back then, to think of it, I announced an average of 3 nights a week.
Wow.
And when I started doing the TV, then I started doing the Philadelphia Spectrum. Then I started doing major arenas. Then the Meadowlands opened, and I started doing the Meadowlands arena. So, one thing I did Pittsburgh, and so one thing led to another. Because it was an asset to them to have the TV announcer live.
Yeah. And it's funny, you keep bringing up the metal, and Vinny is from Carlstadt. I know you're from Kearney, I believe.
Originally, yeah.
I'm from New Milford originally. Like, we're all same area.
All that time just sitting, a mile away. You used to walk down to Giant Stadium to catch the practices, all the time. It's people don't understand, being up in Bergen County, how you have this connection all the time to anybody who's ever lived there, because everyone understands exactly what you're talking about, being from that area. So as soon as you say the Meadowlands, someone will be like, "Oh, what's that?" And we could just like picture it right there. Every building the way it was, and it's pretty.
Yeah,
wild.
It's the same thing with music. Like from early on with the Four Seasons, back in the '60s, to Springsteen, to Bon Jovi. Like it's a Little Steven. It's a tight knit community in the music world, and it's a tight knit community in the wrestling world too. Because New Jersey was the birth of the Monster Factory in South Jersey, so it was the first internationally known wrestling school, which Larry Sharp had opened up. So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of firsts and unique things having to do with this little state.
Yeah, we've like we said, we've interviewed Justin Credible last week or 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about how he had a family in Hazlet, New Jersey. Him and Jeff Hardy were living in Old Bridge, New Jersey, and it's just wow. I mean, we knew a friend of mine was his dad was next door neighbors with Bam Bam. You know, it's just everybody that you watch in the wrestling world somehow has some sort of tie to New Jersey.
In the old days, there were quite a few wrestlers that lived in New Jersey because it was sort of the center of where they had to travel to between Massachusetts and DC and out to Pittsburgh. A bunch of guys lived in Pennsylvania, bunch of guys lived in South Jersey. So, you know, for practical reasons, back in the day, New Jersey was a favorite spot to live. When he first came to the East Coast, Pat Patterson lived in the Highlands.
Wow.
He bought a condo and lived in the Highlands.
I have a non-wrestling question for you. And this just came into my head because Vinny mentioned that we're all like Bergen County people. Have you been to White Manor, Jersey City, Hackensack?
Have I been to where?
White Manor, the little burger place. There's one in Jersey City and there's one in Hackensack.
Never have been, no.
Ah, okay. The White Man in Hackensack. I was going to get your opinion because Jersey City one's closer to you, but the Hackensack one is way better.
No, I've not heard of that. Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's like White Castle, but it's like kind of like a mom and pop owned White Castle, right? You would say something like that.
Yeah, it's like fresh. It's not White Castle frozen meat. They make it fresh in front of you, and Bergen County, like you walk in there, you smell like onions when you leave because they're making thousands of burgers while you're sitting there.
You know, I honestly don't hang out much in North Jersey because I just don't like the traffic.
Yeah, me neither. That's why I moved the hell out.
That's why we both moved the hell out.
And I don't think a burger would entice me to take the trip.
Never had White Manor, but I agree with you.
Yeah, now you can have people drive it to you, so it's no big deal. But
so, that's amazing stories you have. But I know you wanted to talk some new stuff, and we both want to talk new stuff. What did you think of Fastlane? Did you watch Fastlane?
Yeah, I did. I did watch it. It all depends on how much you want to buy into, the evolution of where wrestling has come. I have certain rules that have to be followed. And then after that, you can, you can take off and do different things from that. I think it's the most important thing is to remember that wrestling should be presented as a contest, and that the whole purpose of the two people. Now, this is going to sound really sophomoric, but this isn't being done in a lot of cases. The whole point of the two people or the four people or the six people entering the ring is to beat the other people. And the only way to do that is to make them submit or to pin them. And anything that you do that is contrary to achieving that goal, why is it being done? Like, it shouldn't be done. So I think that's really basic. And I think if wrestlers of today were to hold fast to that, then there would be less controversy as to where wrestling has taken us. There's too much emphasis on the entertain, and I hope it's not because those that have more emphasis on the entertainment cannot entertain by wrestling.
Yeah. So
they enter the ring and they do other things. For instance, and I know this is like going to be such an unpopular statement, but when a guy goes to the top turnbuckle and he faces inside the ring, he's standing in the top turnbuckle, and he dives backwards onto the floor It makes no effing sense. If you're trying to win a match, why would you do that? I mean, I can understand going to the top turnbuckle, but I would think that I would face my opponent and drive my knee through his skull.
Right.
What's the point of flipping backwards?
For show. That's all it's about.
It's all
right?
a show, yeah.
Yeah. The like you said before, the window dressing. You know.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't go towards. It doesn't abide by those rules of what you're supposed to do as a pro wrestler.
Now, Ryan, I'm sure me and Ryan have talked about this multiple times in, day-to-day conversation and on podcasts. Like you said, the entertainment is driving wrestling at this point. Me, in my personal opinion, 85 to 90% of what the WWE is doing right now, the main roster, is just I just can't get down with it. NXT is a better promotion in my mind, only because they're more wrestling driven. Aside from, there are bigger spots, but they're more wrestling driven rather than storylines. The theatrics in WWE, we talked about it with the women's match. They're putting a man, Reginald, into this match, taking away all the athletic ability and what people are watching about the women, when that's what you should be focusing on, and then you're focusing on this guy who's just not interesting whatsoever.
Well, to say that that they've come to an entertainment overload implies that good wrestling is not entertaining. Just because there's not, the use of like green slime, and there's not the use of, black crack coming out of Randy Orton's mouth, it doesn't mean that it can't be entertaining.
Right.
But there's a limit, and there was always crap in wrestling, going all the way back from when I started. There were always, and when I say crap, I mean improbable things that people bought into. But they had their place, and they knew where the line was, and usually they were mid-card to lower-card attractions. And when a Bruno Sammartino or a Ric Flair or a Harley Race stepped into the ring for a main event, now it's time for serious business. So it depends on how it's used and how far they go. But it's not to say that it never existed. It always existed.
Right.
Back in the 50s and the 60s, and with your Gorgeous George and your Ricky Starr, who was a ballerina. But yet a huge draw. And Gorgeous George knew how to wrestle. Gorgeous George was a pretty good wrestler. After he, got rid of the bobby pins and the cape, and he perfumed the ring, then he got down to business.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to Vinny's point, like I agree with you 100%. I think we've talked about it. It's not like there's amazing wrestling matches to this day. Even like I don't know if you watched AEW Revolution. There was amazing matches there. Fastlane, the Nakamura Rollins match was really good. I think his point, and if I'm wrong, correct me. The wrestling entertainment of it almost takes a backseat in WWE than the storyline and the promo and the backstage stuff that they're doing more and more. They can't even call it wrestling anymore. It's superstars. And I understand his point of view, but the wrestling almost takes a backseat when it's just as good as everything else they're doing.
Yeah,
I understand.
Yeah,
I understood that.
Yeah.
If you want to take on that same program, if you want to take a look at a real good match that made so much sense, it was Roman Reigns, Daniel Bryan. The way Daniel Bryan approached Reigns, he didn't go in and wrestle like he would every other match. He had a game plan very early on. You can see what his game plan was. He understood that he wasn't as powerful, that he wasn't as big. That's the kind of story that needs to be told.
Right.
Yes,
absolutely.
I think there's always a big confusion as to what storytelling is. Storytelling isn't necessarily these outlandish plots that they concoct out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
That told a story within the match. That's what we mean by good storytelling, not the ludicrous crap that surrounds some of the other wrestlers.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the best matches too. The ending, I mean, I'm sorry, Vinny, to cut you off. The ending, I get the whole, we predicted 2 weeks ago that it was going to be a triple threat match with Daniel Bryan, and I'm sure on Friday they're going to announce that. But the ending, they do have a lot of things in our opinion that great match. The ending is lackluster. I get the whole angle with Edge, being upset that he got, chair shot, but they could have ended it a different way. It was unbelievable. He tapped out. He accidentally hit Edge. The ref is knocked out. It's a good storyline, but then having Edge just hit them both with the chair, it's predictable almost to a point.
Yeah, and I didn't have a problem with the finish. I mean, that's really a matter of opinion. And there were certain. I just always go back. I mean, there were certain formulas that were used in the past too. So that's another thing. Formulaic. Today's wrestling is way too formulaic. What you see in the first match is the same as what you see in the third match, is the same as what you see in the last match. And there doesn't seem to be any boundaries. It's almost like selfish, where I'm going to go out there and I'm going to give them everything that I can. And that shouldn't be everyone's job.
Mm-hmm.
What I was happy about with Fastlane is that, unlike some of their other pay-per-views, it built. To the lesser important matches came out first to the more important matches.
Yeah.
And what, for instance, Jeff Hardy does, and what he's known for, Mustafa Ali shouldn't be doing it in his match. It shouldn't be everyone can do everything, right, because then it takes away from the specialness of what Jeff Hardy can do, for instance. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think another thing that we talked about is that in WWE, it seems like sometimes the storylines are either it's a slow build, which is it works in some cases, but sometimes it's too long. Like, I believe that the Bray Wyatt Randy Orton story dragged on way too long. I understand why they had to wait to bring the Fiend back, but the Alexa Bliss stuff kind of felt like a filler, and then other things feel like it's rushed. It's like, all right, we have to do this right now.
Like, where did that Shane McMahon match come from?
Yeah, exactly. And Elias versus Braun Strowman, nobody really wants to see it. I love Braun Strowman, and it's just, this guy, I think he's kind of getting a shaft. But some of it's like a payoff right away, or not even a payoff. It's just a rush storyline, and then other ones are so slow building that by the time it gets to the payoff, you didn't even remember what happened at the beginning,
I think part of the problem is the result of like committee booking.
Right.
Like, you don't have one person you have one person in the WWE or in AEW also that's saying yes or no at the end. But as far as creating what's going on, I think it lacks cohesion often because you have ideas coming from many different places, and it doesn't always fit together to make a common sense, entertaining, tight program.
Right. I just want to say one more thing, because I've heard this from a couple of my friends that knew people that were writers for WWE a couple years ago, and I don't know if this is true or if this is just a rumor. They said that they were hired as a writer. They would complete a couple weeks, and they would be like, all right, your services are no longer needed, and they revolve writers, and it's never a long, it's never someone who stays around way too long. I guess maybe it's not for continuity, but maybe so that the leaks aren't available, being made, or I don't know what the reason would be, but.
Well, that would be another reason, why things aren't always don't always come together and make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this too. I don't know what your opinion is on Vince McMahon, but we've read everything that says Vince McMahon has the final say on pretty much everything, and some of his thinking to us seems it's a little, 1999, 1989. So a lot of the stuff he does is genius. He's he makes storylines, he makes characters, and they become amazing. But then some of the stuff he does, or some of the stuff he denies, or people he pushes, or people he doesn't push, it almost seems archaic in a way.
Well, isn't that always the case? Like if you go back to the golden years of Hulkamania, you had some pretty stupid characters back then.
Yeah.
Max Moon, Zeus,
the Red Rooster. You had. It's just that what they did on top was so much more compelling than what they're doing now.
That was I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vinny.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that was always our thing when the Monday Night Wars were happening. It was to me it was always WWE had the perfect main events, and WCW had the perfect mid card, and it was like you tuned into Nitro until the main event happened, and then you flip over to Raw, and you watch the main event, because it just seemed like that. The bad characters were in the main event on WCW, and the bad characters were in the mid card on Raw.
I'm thinking with WWE now, with Edge coming back, and me and Ryan, we spoke about this also. Now Christian coming back to AEW. Do you think that it's kind of a dig at the younger wrestlers, that these guys that have been, they're obviously legends, they're Hall of Famers, that they come in now, they sign this contract, and they're thrust right into the main event, and these guys have been working, in AEW the past 9-10 months, these guys that have come up from, NXT to WWE, working their ass off, and now it's like, well, here's Edge. He's a Hall of Famer, right into the title picture.
You can work your butt off, but it doesn't mean that you're qualified or ready.
Yeah.
Just because you worked your butt. I can go out and dribble a basketball till the sun comes home. I'll never be a pro basketball player, nor never could I.
Oh, I understand that, but what I'm saying is someone who is ready, like Cesaro. The guy's
Miro.
ready to be a star, and he could be put in that main event scene in a second. And it's like, or Miro in AEW. Rusev Day was the biggest thing in WWE, and it's kind of like, well, let's roll out Shane McMahon and let's put him in a main event match, or let's roll out Edge, or let's roll out Goldberg. And don't get me wrong, they're all talented, but it's the fact now. I think it's a disservice kind of to the fans. Yeah, there's nostalgia involved, but I'm buying Cesaro beating Roman Reigns more than I am Edge beating Roman Reigns.
Yeah, I think they would tell you, the company would tell you that everybody's supposed to be working for the benefit of the company, and not for and this is what they want. They call guys and gals superstars, but they don't really want anyone to stand out for too long.
Right.
Just for as long as we can use you to headline WrestleMania, because they use that as a way to humble them. It's very different. If you're talking about that idea in the WWE, it's very different than AEW, because AEW has so many young, so many young, I'll even say untested talent. You're talking about Cesaro. He's tested. I worked with Cesaro. He was Claudio back then when I was working with Ring of Honor in the mid 2000s. And that's amazing. When I was with Ring of Honor in the mid 2000s, the roster consisted of CM Punk, AJ Styles, Colt Cabana, the guy that's now Cesaro, Samoa Joe. Wow. It was an incredible lineup, and to see where they've all come, right, and grown to is for me is satisfying because I used to do the backstage interview, right. And someone like an AJ Styles, man, he was so bad. He would say such inappropriate things that I'd have to stop and say, look, we'll do it again, and you can say it if you want, but like the gay audience, you don't want to alienate any audience,
right?
And if you use that term, you're going to turn off all gay people. So like, why are you saying that? But that's really how he felt. I mean, that's how he, that was just him talking as AJ.
Right. It's got to be kind of the same thing with Scott Steiner. I remember watching him in the TNA promos and WCW promos, and I'm like, that would never fly today. I don't even understand how he was allowed to do it. Yeah. Stuff with the women all the time. What's going on, Scott? Oh, you know what's going on later? You in my hotel room. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
What draws your attention today? Like, Monday night, obviously everybody watches Raw. Tuesday night Impact's on, but I know NXT is switching to Tuesday night, I think. And then you got what's drawing your attention now? Like, what do you watch the most of?
I still like I don't miss an AEW show because it just has the feel of what's going to happen next. There's a lot about it that I think needs, improvement, but I think it's more interesting, for instance, than NXT. And I'll watch Raw sometimes. I'll never watch the whole 3 hours.
Yeah.
I'll watch SmackDown sometimes. I did catch the NWA pay-per-view this past weekend.
I did not see that. I did not even know it was on this weekend.
Yeah. So I mean, each promotion has its positives and not so, and things that don't, fly well with me. But I find there's more of a curiosity factor for me with AEW.
Now, I think I'm sorry if I cut you off, Vinny, again. I think I've talked about this with Vinny. I love the fact that AEW is working with the other promotions, with Impact and NWA and Ring of Honor, all those guys. But again, like Vinny was saying, you bring in a legend like a Christian to come into AEW and take a title spot, but then you're also bringing in somebody like Thunder Rosa, who's amazing from NWA, and she's taking a spot on the pay-per-view from one of the women, like an Anna Jay, who's been working her ass off for months. And it's almost kind of like, well, why would I sign with AEW? If they won't want me, I can just go to Impact, or I can go to NWA, or I can go to New Japan, make less money, but I can still appear on AEW, and I can take a spot of somebody like the Butcher and the Blade, one of my favorite tag teams. You bring in a tag team from Impact, like the Good Brothers, they're taking a spot from guys like Pac and Butcher and the Blade, and how do you feel about that?
Those guys are under guaranteed contracts. So when you say you're taking a spot from them, it's not hurting them financially. I mean, it is a business. Where else would some of that talent that you're talking about, whose spot, and I don't know that anyone owns a spot, but whose spot is being taken, where else would they be able to go and make guaranteed money wrestling once or twice a week?
See, I didn't know it was guaranteed contracts.
Some, a lot of them are. Those guys that you mentioned are. So I don't know. I don't see the complaint. I mean, if you are deemed to be a mid-card wrestler, like maybe you're just not envisioned as being a headliner. I mean, that's up to Tony Khan. Yeah. So accept it or move on, or don't take the paycheck.
Right. I think part of what Ryan might be trying to say too is, so not so much with AEW, but WWE as well. you got guys like Aleister Black and Andrade and Ricochet, and it's not much of them taking a spot, and it's not about the guaranteed contract or the money. Some guys, I'm sure, want exposure over. I mean, the money's great, but exposure helps them propel themselves into the stratosphere of being, more notable or recognizable. That's
Well, Vinny, what I would say to you then is, if they thought they can get more exposure someplace else, then they should go there.
Right. Yeah.
No one made them sign their contract. No one's holding them to where they are.
Vince is.
part of the problem, in the post-territory era, which has been decades now, is a staleness in the talent.
Yeah.
I mean, they would probably be doing the promotions some favors, because then they'd have to make new discoveries. So, yeah, I as long as they're being offered X amount of dollars and they've agreed to it,
right,
and they don't have anything in their contract that says they're going to be a headliner,
right,
then what's the problem?
You're right. No, fair
You're
enough.
looking out for. You're sounding like their agent.
Maybe I should go apply for a job somewhere.
If they can make that much money or more, and remember, with AEW, they can work other places.
Right. Yeah.
Which is incredible.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Then they should go. Like, no one's holding a gun to their head.
Right. I had one thing about if you watched AEW last week, the women's match between Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker blew my mind. Like, I thought that was just incredible. I've never seen something like that before. On television in a women's match, where I was just like, what are they going to do next? That it just held my attention.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Who like in all these federations, in WWE, Impact, AEW, NW. I don't know a lot about NWA. Who do you think the top guy, like the top 5 top guys, are, like, in every federation that you think that guy should be a champion, that guy should be a champion?
You know what? I would need a list of the rosters in front of me to be fair about it, because I probably wouldn't be, thinking of a particular person. But one guy. So I'm not going to give you any top anything, but one guy that impresses me and holds himself up as a champion is Nick Aldis, the NWA champion. Now, you probably wouldn't have expected me to say that, because, everybody's, because WWE and AEW are so popular and they have so much more of a following. But Nick Aldis, the way he conducts himself, the way he represents the NWA, his wrestling ability, the way he keeps himself in shape. If I was a promoter, he'd be the perfect champion.
I'll have to look more into it. Yeah, I don't watch a lot of him. We've talked about this. I'm not a huge Billy Corgan fan in general. I love the fact that he kept the NWA alive, because I respect that. But I don't know. There's a stigma with me with Billy Corgan.
Why is that?
I've never been a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan, and
I know nothing about his music, but by watching the NWA pay-per-view, I think he needs to spend a little bit of money, and get a little bit more creative. I understand the charm of his television product is going back to the old studio wrestling days, so I understand that there's a simplicity to that. But I think he needs a ring announcer. For one,
ring announcer?
I know one.
Yeah, we know one.
He doesn't have a ring announcer, and when there's an interviewer and he announces the matches from a podium. The only time he got in the ring to announce was for the main event, and when in the introduction of your world champion, when the world champion's name isn't the last thing that is said in the introduction, there's a problem there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or when you do a 10-bell salute to a fallen wrestler, you need to find someone that can count and actually ring the bell 10 times, not 6.
Ugh.
You know, like little things like that are important.
Yeah.
And they're easy. They're easy to solve.
Yeah. The details are definitely important, and I would say.
Where would you want to announce now? Like if you had if you had contracts sitting in front of you, and I asked this to Just Incredible last week or 2 weeks ago, if you had a contract from every wrestling promotion, Ring of Honor, AEW, WWE, NWA, where would you sign to announce right now?
Wow, that's it's not such a simple question to answer because well, I get now if you're going to say that I would have everything that I wanted.
Yeah,
is that what we're going to say?
All contracts are the same. Everything.
Yeah, every contract's the same. Whatever you want.
Probably with the new show that's coming, probably AEW.
Now, you've done work with AEW.
Yeah. About a year ago, they called me in I got a call on a Sunday, and before I was able to return the call, I was thinking, oh, they're probably thinking about 3 months from now when they're in Philadelphia, because what they were doing was bringing old timers who were associated with the territory in which they were appearing. In just to wave to the people. But Chris Jericho had something in mind where it was the weigh-ins for the Moxley Jericho match, and he had something very specific in mind, and he wanted me to do it, and that was just for 3 days later. So and I had been off. I had been off major national TV for 25 years. So for that to be, first they said, we want you to do a segment. I said, no, I'm sorry. I don't do segments. It's like, that's not what I do. That's not my strength. I'm a ring announcer. I don't, but then when Jericho sent in a video to show me what he was looking for, I saw that they were ring announcements that he wanted me to promo the show, the pay-per-view that was happening that Saturday, and then to bring the guys to the ring and then do the same ring introductions to bring them to the scale. So when I saw that that's what it was, it's like, oh yeah, well that's in my wheelhouse, because I would have never gone and put myself out there on live TV in front of 1 million people to do something that I had not done before. That would have been stupid. It would have been better not to be on TV.
When you go back after all that time, is it, like they say, like riding a bicycle, you just go right back into, like, it just naturally flows, or you need to prep yourself up, to be able, pump yourself up, or
yeah, it was there. I didn't have to. It's really hard to, like, with what I do, to like rehearse or anything. It's live. It's in the moment. It was a crazy crowd that was in Kansas City. So when Jericho was insulting me, I couldn't hear what he was saying. I knew he was insulting me, but I couldn't make out what he was saying because the arena was just so loud.
Wow.
So loud. And maybe it's just as well that I couldn't hear him. I mean, even though I couldn't hear him, I was reacting as if I could hear it.
Right.
Because he and I spoke before the show, so I knew what he was going to do. I didn't know exactly what he was going to say. I think he called me a weird old man, and that was cool. That was fine. But when he said that I was a reason for WCW going down the toilet, I'm glad I didn't hear that, because I might have informed him that I wasn't with WCW when But so that was just as well, because I shouldn't have come back, and I might have, and I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah, you could have told him, well, after I left is when you got there, Jericho. So who's the real
That's
reason?
right. Yeah, you're exactly right. And I don't know whether he was there when they went out of business, or was he there when it was sold?
No, he left in '99.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
he left right before it started to get real bad.
He jumped a sinking ship right at the end.
So I had a lot of fun there. They treated me well. They came through with everything that they said they would, and I guess that's where, if everything being equal and I got what I thought should be, that's where I'd want to go.
Nice. I respect that.
Especially since they're adding programming. I mean, that's the point.
Right.
It's not to take anyone's place. It's just to create a new show.
Right. Yeah. Paul White's doing the new show as a broadcaster, I believe, right?
Right. The YouTube show.
Yeah.
But they're creating a new TNT show.
I think that's the one actually Paul White's going to broadcast on.
Oh, eventually.
Now,
okay.
You've been around 40 plus years. You don't look a day older than us, and we're in our 40s. We had a whole episode where we discussed how WCW used to love calling young guys up and comers. What advice do you have for up and comers trying to break into the business right now?
Learn how to wrestle. I mean, just learn how to wrestle. It's and that's, I mean, some of these things that I'm saying just sound so dumb and inane, but you'd be surprised. I mean, I go to my fair share of indie shows, and I understand that that's where, because I'm a big proponent to support the indies, and I understand that's where guys and gals get their experience, and I'm not expecting international level expertise, but the WWE has really poisoned the water, and since they de-emphasize wrestling to the degree that they do, not to say that they don't have great wrestlers, because they do. That's what the up-and-comers are thinking that it's all about. Like, they're taking the entertainment side of things,
right,
to a level that shouldn't be. I mean, they need to learn their basics. They need to find a real good school that has a good reputation, that's run by someone that's reputable, that has a record of placing their students in the major promotions, and learn their craft. I just find that I'm insulted when the wrestlers laugh at wrestling. It used to be that when people learned that you were a wrestling fan, they would laugh at you and say that it's fake. Now you have wrestlers that are doing that.
Yeah.
They don't belong in the sport.
Like Ryback. But, the guy...
They don't belong in the sport.
No, I agree with you 100%.
They should go and find something else to do and call it something else.
Right.
Because what they're doing, like what a Joey Ryan did, it's not wrestling.
Yeah. I agree with you.
And excuse me.
No,
you got me hot. You got me hot, and you got me on a rant.
All right, go for it.
Wrestling is not, just because it evolves, and it should evolve, it's not anything you want to make it to be.
Right.
Okay, I'll stop there.
No, I mean, I'm 100% with you.
Don't get me pissed off, Vinny. Don't get me pissed off.
I might set it off a little bit with this next one, but no, with you got these guys that go on their Twitter, and they're former WWE stars. I mentioned him once or twice before Ryback, and he goes and says, "Oh well, what do you mean? The belts are fake, and this is fake, and this is fake." It's like, dude, it's called kayfabe, first of all. We're supposed to make it the illusion that everything is real and bought into, and this is actually happening. These are two guys beating the snot out of each other. They hate each other, and he's just blowing it up because he sucked. And that kind of pisses me off, because you couldn't make it, and you have sour grapes because you weren't the guy, that you want to, spoil it for everybody else and for fans. It's unfortunate to me. I don't know, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm not. I think you're talking about a particular person in a particular case, and I'm not familiar with it. But let me talk to the experienced, maybe retired folks, wrestlers. If you really love the sport and you want to keep it on the more straight and narrow, insulting young folks, blasting young wrestlers is not going to help. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of speaking what you think is true and having a reason for it. And I have at indie shows, at my stage show, at conventions, I'm really impressed with the younger generation of both fans and wrestlers who are interested in what happened in the past and take the time to research it. Otherwise, they'd have no idea who I was, because I've been out of the public eye for so long. Right. But also, for my education background, my educator hat, if I put that on, you're not going to communicate with anyone by insulting them. If you're looking to make a difference, you have to find a common ground.
Right, dialogue.
And these folks, whether they do what I think should be done in a ring or not, they do love their idea of wrestling. Mm-hmm. And if you can show them that what is being done shouldn't be done, and give a good reason for it, and maybe compare it to other worlds, then maybe you can make a difference. Right. For instance, when I talked before about everybody going out and doing the same thing and like doing all their moves, and so go to a concert and sit for 2 hours and you're going to listen to the same song for 2 hours? You're going to be entertained by that?
No.
You know what I'm saying? So that's what's being expected, because if everybody goes out and does a moonsault, and everybody goes out and does these MMA kind of kicks, and everybody goes out and doesn't do mat wrestling, that's what you're left with. The sameness of each match.
Right. Yep.
So not only does a match need to build within its 10, 15, 20 minutes, but a show, an event needs to build. Mm-hmm. So that there's nothing wrong with, and it's absolutely necessary to have like your first match or two of an event be throwaways that no one cares so much about.
Yeah.
Every match doesn't have to look like a main event. Mm-hmm. Because the show needs to build.
Absolutely.
And they used to have jobbers or enhancement talent, as they called it. Somebody we've discussed, another Jersey person, Jim Powers, was the perfect example of enhancement talent that you maybe don't have them on a pay-per-view, but at least on a Raw or a Nitro, you'd have these guys that would come in first, second match, and they would build up the other guy, make them look like a monster, and then you put them in the pay-per-view, and then they fight somebody that's more worthy, quote unquote, and it built the show up. It wasn't just, hit your spot, hit your spot, hit your spot, hit your spot, and then like what you're saying, it's the same thing for 2 hours.
Right. So if you use that kind of logic and that kind of an analogy with a young up-and-coming wrestler or some of these promoters. Because, if I was a promoter, probably a third of the wrestling community wouldn't work for me. Because I would tell them, like, if you're in the first match or two, you're a great mat wrestler, go do it. But hold this back, hold that back, don't do that.
Right.
Or I would say to the whole locker room, your main event guy, this is his move. No one else is to do it.
Right.
I mean, if back in the day, everybody frog splashed off the top turnbuckle when it was a Jimmy Snuka thing, then the Jimmy Snuka thing wouldn't be a thing.
Right.
So if you use logic, because the kinds of things that I think make wrestling successful are, I mean, everything that's done, it's based on logic. And there's a reason. There's a reason why there are tag ropes and that a tag in should only be hand to hand,
Right.
not slapping on the back.
Mm-hmm.
You by shortcutting things, and that's what a lot of this is. It's taking, which is the same reason that referees don't warn wrestlers when they use a fist. It's like a shortcut. Well, we know it's going to happen, so, but no, you take the steps. By not using these steps, for instance, the tag rope, you eliminate times and situations where there could be drama, where one hand is holding the rope and the other hand is reaching out.
Right.
If it was as easy as just slapping someone on the back, you're taking that tool away.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We really hit a button here. I love everything you're saying. We agree, but we really pushed a button here.
I mean,
And you don't have to agree. It's just,
No, we do. We do,
watched-
100%.
we watched the I forget what pay-per-view it was. I don't think it was Starrcade or something. It was a Ric Flair Hogan First Blood match. Ric Flair bled in the first 5 minutes. Hogan and him were both bleeding within the first 7 minutes, gushing blood, and the bell wasn't called, and it wound up being a submission, or right he beat him by submission or pinfall.
Flair put Hogan in the figure 4, and then Little Nate, Charles Robinson, called a pinfall
Yeah,
for Ric
that's
Flair.
Meanwhile, the rule of the match is a first blood match, and it's kind of like, that was the rule. That was the stipulation for the match, and you ignored it completely, and just where everyone else is, like, what's going on right now?
Even Tony Schiavone said in the announcing, I guess we're still going with this match.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah. I was happy to see, for instance, the referee with it seemed like to be a very severe count on Fastlane. As far as countouts go.
Yes.
And to watch the guys have to scurry back to the ring, or just like duck into the ring to break the count and come out. Like there are reasons for these rules.
Right.
It creates situations, or it allows for situations to exist where you can play on people's emotions.
And it's drama without doing quote unquote drama. You're creating drama by doing something like rolling into the ring and rolling out. You're creating that drama by doing little things, and it keeps you engaged in the match.
And that's why those rules are there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they exist to begin with. So to ignore them, it makes no sense.
On that note, too, with the I wanted to know about when you're talking about building a match or building a show. I find, I don't know if it's just with Raw or even with the pay-per-views. Obviously, Raw, USA Network, they want you to hook in the audience. The first match has to be, well, it's not even the first match anymore. It's the promo. The first thing on Raw every time is the promo. The main eventers come out. We want to hook the audience. Then you'll have 40 minutes of nonsense. And then the second hour, it's a big match where there's a lot going on. And then another lull. And then the main event. The same thing with pay-per-views. I found, Royal Rumble, they did a couple times that they didn't build the match. They started with the men's Royal Rumble, which the whole point of the show is the Royal Rumble. That's like the title. I don't understand why you would put that match, which everyone's looking forward to, as the first match of the night.
I agree.
Yeah.
The Royal Rumbles back in the day, I think we covered a couple of them. The old Royal Rumbles, the early 90s, it was always every title was on the line, and then it was the Royal Rumble. And that made sense. And even if they did that with the women, because, Royal Rumbles and WrestleMania start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and they end at 4 o'clock in the morning, But you have every title on the line to determine who is the champion, and then you have the Royal Rumbles. That was always the classic formula, and they diverted away from it somewhere.
And there is a difference, though, between a pay-per-view and a cable show, because you do have to be aware of the ratings in a cable show. With a pay-per-view, you don't have to. I mean, they're buying in.
Yeah.
Right. You're locked in, and so there is. I agree with you. There's no excuse for the Royal Rumble to be first. Yeah, and I just think it's that they just don't have confidence that people are going to be so hyped about what's coming up in Raw or SmackDown that they can't build to it.
Yeah.
In other words, they have to suck you in right away. And maybe today's audiences are like that. Maybe they're, a little too quick to turn the channel.
Yeah.
And they're not going to sit through a build-up. So if that's the case, then I can understand with jump-starting the show.
Yeah.
But 3 hours is way too long.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Ryan, I remember we used to watch Raw, and it'd be something with Stone Cold, and the whole show, it would be match segment with Stone Cold that, was he coming? Well, he was arrested. And then it would be like, he's in jail. Don't worry about it. They would mention it throughout the whole show to the point that he comes back driving,
the beer truck or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And
right.
it built all the way to the end. And you sustained watching it because you're like, oh, well, something's going to happen with this. And now it's kind of, it'll happen at the beginning. And you're like, all right, now I have to wait 2.5 hours for this to pay off.
I remember being a kid and they teased the week before. This was before SmackDown. They teased the week before that Shawn Michaels might be back at Raw to start up DX again the right way, quote unquote. And I remember being somewhere and driving home and putting Raw on, and they kept teasing somebody's coming back with DX. Somebody's coming back with DX, and it was like China came back. But they had me hooked every segment because they kept teasing it. And it doesn't seem like they do that anymore. It doesn't seem like they hook you at the beginning. They kind of pardon their phrase, they kind of blow their load at the beginning and they do it again at the end.
Yeah. One thing I'll say about the AEW Dynamite show is it goes by pretty fast. Like when you're watching that, there's no oh my God, when is this going to be over? There is too much sameness, I think, throughout the show. Like every match doesn't need to begin before the bell rings, and then there needs to be, some kind of afterbirth every match. I mean, why can't we just introduce the guys, have them wrestle, announce a winner, and then they go back? That rarely happens in that show.
I've said this before, and I know Booker T just came out and said it, and I'm not saying he's ripping me up because obviously he's Booker T. But I kind of have this feeling AEW, I love AEW, and there's a lot of guys in AEW that I think are amazing. But I feel like they're slowly going down the WCW road, where their mid-carders are amazing, their main eventers are a little older, they're signing the old WWE guys, and like you said, it's always something after the match, or it's a DQ, or it's a run-in. I feel like they may have taken a wrong turn somewhere. They have amazing talent, and they're doing amazing things, but they're kind of doing that old 1996, 1997 WCW thing.
There's something manic about it. Like there are these major changes all the time, real quick. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said that not everybody needs to be in a stable.
Right.
Yes.
Of their main people, Hangman Page, I think he's the only one that comes to mind that's not in a stable.
Didn't he? Well, no, at Revolution he joined the Dark Order. Didn't he?
So who's not in a stable? That's at the top.
There's not a lot.
Moxley in the stable. Moxley,
yeah.
Yeah, he's He's with Kingston, but that's not really a stable.
Yeah, that's true. Kingston saved his life.
In that explosion.
I don't know what happened there. It was just...
The pay-per-view was, for the most part, was really good.
Yeah,
and that match was amazing. But then that explosion...
Yeah, it's some of that. Some of the, for instance, at Fastlane the other night, who was it? Somebody went under the ring and grabbed like 6 canes. Or
that was the McIntyre Sheamus.
Like, what the hell are they doing under the ring? Like, what's the whole? Like, they need to. They're really pushing it when they expect, if they expect, people to like try to get into it. That's the main difference. Like in the past, you would be into it emotionally, and you wouldn't have a choice. Now it's more maybe mental, and I think that takes away from the enjoyment.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%.
But it's harder to hook people emotionally. I mean, that's an art.
Yeah. You can connect with something. Everybody, like, when we were kids, you connected with something, and that became your favorite show. Vinny is a huge Shawn Michaels fan because he connected with him. I'm a huge Bret Hart fan because there was something about him I liked. You connected with them on some level. And it was almost effortless.
Yeah.
And also wrestlers connecting with each other without using words. For instance, the way Darby Allin looks at Sting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just the way he looks at him. It says volumes. He doesn't have to say how he feels about Sting. He doesn't. And there's, and then even in his like far away kind of look, you make up your own scenario in your mind. Like, this was a lost kid, and maybe he's found someone who he can relate to and he can look up to, and he needs that in his life, even though he's not a kid, but I'm just saying, so much can be done without using words, without spelling it out.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time it is. I don't know if it's trying to say that the audience is stupid, but it's pretty much like, like you said, we are going to spell it out for you. We're going to tell you exactly everything that's going on, so there's no confusion. When I think that some things should be left up to your own imagination on which way it could go.
Yes. Agreed.
By the way, I was telling Ryan before we started, I was watching, there's like Pluto TV has this TNA channel. I was watching it at work, and they had TNA Slammiversary 2009. And I didn't realize how many people were in TNA at that time. And I wish I actually watched TNA because it was actually one of the best pay-per-views I saw in any promotion in a really long time. It had a King of the Mountain match with Samoa Joe, Mick Foley, AJ, Jeff Jarrett, and Kurt Angle. It was incredible. And I never watched TNA until, maybe a few years ago when it was Impact, and it wasn't even close to being, that kind of same show.
Yeah, I've never watched TNA or Impact. I have no idea what they've done.
No.
They have some really good talent there. I think they're clawing at trying to be at the level AEW and WWE are at, but I think that they have good talent there. You're shaking your head like, yeah.
I'll take your word for it. I don't know. I don't know who's there. And even if I knew the names, I probably wouldn't know who they are.
I mean, Tommy Dreamer. He's probably the biggest name they have there right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Vinny.
So we're on the road to WrestleMania. So we were thinking about what your predictions are for some of the WrestleMania matches that have been announced so far.
Oh. You want to feed them to me?
Yeah. We're going to have Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley.
Oh, man. Whichever way they go is okay with me, but honestly, you want to know who I think is going to win?
Yeah.
I don't have a clue, which is a good thing.
Right.
It's a real good thing. It means, this is one case where it's not, fed to me. I have a split feelings about it because I would like to see. I like both guys, and I would like to see Drew McIntyre get a run in front of a live audience, and yet I respect Bobby Lashley for all of the years that he's put in and the work that he does. And they're both very believable.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll root for both of them. Sorry that I didn't mean to wimp out on that, but.
No, I mean, personally, my personal thing is I'd love to see Lashley win, and then, what's his name? Brock Lesnar's music hit, and then all of a sudden Lesnar comes out to the ring, and then you set up a three-way thing with McIntyre, Lashley, and Lesnar, and that could be a storyline that continues for a long time.
Well, you didn't ask me to be a booker. You asked me who I thought was going to win.
That's true.
That's true. I did not ask you that. Okay.
You got Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair, and I kind of feel this is another one that could go either way.
Yeah, I like Sasha Banks.
Yeah, me too. This is one that I'm sure no one's really too thrilled with, and this is the quintessential Vince McMahon throwing a celebrity into a pay-per-view. Bad Bunny with Damien Priest versus The Miz with John Morrison. Why you would not just have Damien Priest, who's an amazing wrestler, wrestle at WrestleMania and put Bad Bunny to wrestle is beyond me, but
I know Damien Priest from the Monster Factory.
Okay.
Last time I saw him was at a convention, and it was only, could it have been 3 years ago? I want to say 2 years ago. Maybe it'll be 3 years come this summer. And he was sitting at a table all by himself. No one cared. Everybody's just walking by this guy. I felt sorry for him, because there were no fans that knew who he was. He was an indie wrestler from the Monster Factory. So I went over and I sat and I talked to him for a while. And it's just the reason I point that out is, look what the difference of 2.5 years makes.
Oh yeah, I mean he blew through NXT, and I when I first saw him, I was like, same thing probably what those fans were doing at that walking past the table. I was like, who the hell is this guy? I'm not interested. And then when I started to watch him, like, wow, he's actually pretty good. He's entertaining, tells a good story. He's a good wrestler. So I'm happy for him. I just wish he was actually in the match.
I had left my table at that convention because I wanted to say hi to Doink and Dink. And so I went over and I know them both from way, way back. Mm-hmm. And we posed for a picture and I said, I want to join. Can I be the third member? I want it could be like Dink, Doink, and Dunk. But they didn't. Well, I guess they didn't want to split the money 3 ways.
I think there was a Dunk when they did that Survivor Series with Doink and the 3 little people wrestlers versus Jerry the King Lawler and the 3 Little Kings. I think there was a Dunk, so that's probably why you didn't join.
Yeah. What's the next one?
It's really funny.
A little technical difficulties.
Gary, you froze up for a second.
I'm here. I didn't touch anything.
I know we got you. We got you now. Sorry.
On my Facebook page, I don't get too much blowback from the fans that follow it, but I purposely use the word midget because I know that it rankles a lot of people. I don't even know why, but it pisses people off. Like when you said little people, like I guess that's what they want to say, or folks that think that midgets. See, I think we should have midgets on some of these shows. Like, what's the deal?
I went to say midget, but I didn't know what your deal was with it, so I kind of went PC with it. So.
No, I'm the opposite of PC, but I just know that it makes some people uncomfortable, so therefore I use the word midget. Like when I post, of things from the past, or I'll also throw in wrestlers, wrestling animals, because I know people hate that too.
Oh, like when people wrestle a bear and stuff.
Yeah, and I have a history with Victor the wrestling bear, but.
Wait a second. We're an hour and a half into this, and you're throwing out there that you have a history with Victor the wrestling bear.
Yeah, I introduced Victor at an indie show when I was between working for WWF and the NWA. There was an indie show that was promoted by this guy by the name of Billy Dello in Asbury Park at the convention hall. And Sergeant Slaughter was, I guess he was the main event. But Victor was there, and I got to the show, and so Billy meets me in that front lobby of convention hall, and I didn't know who was wrestling. But behind him on the wall, behind the ticket seller, they had posters for that night's event. And so as he's talking to me, I'm kind of eyeing the poster, and he says to me, "We've got something that's going to be incredible." He said, "You're gonna love this." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "This has never been seen in Asbury Park before." I said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "Well, Victor's wrestling." I said, "Who's Victor?" He said, "You don't know who Victor is?" He said, Victor the wrestling bear." And I look over his shoulder, and I see a picture of this 600-pound bear on the poster. So I'm thinking to myself, so I said to him, "Look, Billy, you don't really expect me to get into the ring with a bear." He said, "No, it's not a problem." He said, "He's going to wear a muzzle." So I said, "Okay." And he's gonna be wrestling his trainer. So it's not going to be any big deal, he said. But and down the road there's the Coca-Cola bottling company. Yeah. He said, "And I have a deal with Coke. After Victor's match, you're going to take a bottle of Coke and you're going to feed him the Coca-Cola." I said, "Are you kidding?" He said, "No." I said, "How can he drink the Coca-Cola through the muzzle?" "Oh, well, they'll just take the muzzle off, So I said, no, Billy, I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't think so. But Victor was very well trained, and he was very well cared for, backstage.
Yeah.
His dinner was after his match to give him an incentive to perform well. And he waited for his introduction, didn't interrupt me. He was cool. Victor and I got along really well. I think after he heard my announcements, he probably wanted to put the muzzle on me, but that didn't.
I'm surprised that they fed him after the match and not before. Obviously he wrestled his trainer. But if it was just some other guy that they're like, "Hey, listen, guy, you want your big break in wrestling? We'll give you $75 to wrestle Victor the Bear here." And he'd be like, "You got it."
But he's hungry, so be careful.
Victor must have gone to the same wrestling school as George Steele, because he would charge the audience and then back off. And then he would charge another side and back off. It was great.
That's awesome.
If we went, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. We went to Living Dangerously '99 ECW at Convention Hall, and I worked in Asbury Park for almost a decade, and we were on the top row of Convention Hall for Living Dangerously. I think that would not have been far enough if I knew that there was going to be a hungry bear in the ring that was charging the audience.
Exactly.
That was the first venue that I was brought to as a little boy to see wrestling.
Wow.
Convention Hall.
Great spot for wrestling.
Yeah, it was definitely.
When we went, I mean, it was a little, like, I think Vinny said this, it was a little more dangerous outside Convention Hall than it was inside Convention Hall, because we were there in, like, the late 90s.
Yeah.
When I worked there, it was, 2015 to whatever. So, it was a little safer, but it was pretty dangerous when we went. It was like you get to where you're going and you get to your car.
And I went there as a kid in the 60s, and then I announced there in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and it was, and maybe with Ring of Honor in the 2000s. And it was just interesting to see the evolution of that building, where it had, I don't know what it was like in the seated areas, but in the back it had chipped paint. It was all kinds of like little floods on the floor at one point, and then they cleaned it up because that was a beautiful building at one time.
Yeah,
I think there's still the chip paint in the floods, but I think now they call that charm.
Oh, okay. Then they let it go again.
Yeah. Had a couple. Well, they had like 3 more matches for WrestleMania announced. They got Roman Reigns versus Edge, which will probably wind up being Roman Reigns versus Edge versus Daniel Bryan. And
I just think Edge shouldn't win.
Yeah, me neither. I
think Kevin Owens should be involved in the match, and Kevin Owens should be the champion.
Yeah, I just, and I think that goes to the point, Vinny, that you were, talking about, and then bringing back Hall of Famers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they should be putting Hall of Famers, inactive Hall of Famers, over their current superstars.
Yeah, I never agree with that. Like I said, with bringing Goldberg back, he come back except for the last match that he had, but every match you're like, oh, he's going to win. And, the Fiend had won a title the night before in a pay-per-view. Goldberg came back on Raw and beat him. And you're like, what was the point? Why not just not book the Fiend to win?
Right.
Then you got Asuka versus Rhea Ripley.
They need to make Rhea Ripley a star. They need to elevate her.
Yeah.
I love her. I think she's very talented. I think if as long as Vince doesn't fuck it up, I think she could be the top female in the company, along with Asuka.
Not only in the company, but with her look and the way she conducts herself, she has a bright future in entertainment outside of WWE.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. The last one on here, they have The Fiend versus Randy Orton, which I'm assuming The Fiend is just going to win.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even really care, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, neither do I at this point. This kind of brought me. I was going to talk about it before. WWE's product, for some reason, never wants to establish somebody being having an advantage over somebody else. It seems like every time we watch it, it's 50-50 booking going into a pay-per-view, where after 2 or 3 pay-per-views, it's always 50-50 booking. They should just, aside from Roman Reigns beating Kevin Owens, but that was always like, oh, Kevin Owens just lost. There's never a time where they just come out and just wipe the floor with this guy, 2 matches in a row and call it a day and end the feud. It's always, oh, well, he won. And then, oh, he won by rolling him up in a schoolboy. And here's the rubber match. It's like we talked about redundancy, but.
And I think that was one of the strengths of the territory system, was ending a feud, the loser disappears, and you have no idea where he went, but there's work waiting for him down in Texas or up in the Northwest or in Florida. when you have guys and gals under contract and they're not going anywhere, it presents a problem, to avoid staleness. I mean, like, how many times have I seen that match? You might say to yourself,
Yeah.
You pay to see it on a pay-per-view and they give it to you for free on Raw the next night. So people that say that they haven't been used, going back to what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
And I just said, well, they're under contract, they're getting paid, they're doing what's best for the company.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to try to make up somewhat of there not being a territory system and people going away and then coming back fresh.
Right.
It's for the best of the whole product.
Right.
I have one more question for you that I'd like to ask you to do something for us, but
I'm not going to announce. I'm not going to announce.
I'm not saying announce. My question for you is,
okay, go ahead.
When are you getting in the Hall of Fame? They're putting Molly Holly in this year. When is Gary Michael Cappetta getting in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, never going to happen. I'm actually in the New England Hall of Fame.
I saw that.
I'm in the Mid-South Hall of Fame down in Memphis. But no, you'll never see that.
You are the voice of classic WCW. You've announced some of the biggest matches in WCW history, and they're putting Molly Holly. Nothing against her, obviously, but they're putting her. When is Gary Michael Cappetta getting in the WWE Hall of Fame? You deserve to be there. You deserve your spot.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice of you to say. It's never going to happen.
That's a shame to us. That's a shame to us. So, you know what? I can't even say that because I was going to ask you, because we did this with Justin a couple weeks ago. I was going to ask you to announce us as the guys from Parts Unknown and Weight Unknown from Vinnie and Ryan, the Front Face Lock podcast. I wanted to get that classic Gary Capetta announcement so we could put it in our show as an intro.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't take it out of the moment. You need to put me in the ring, put people around, fans around the ring, and then we got something going.
You know what? Next time we get together, you want to do it in like a diner or something? We're going to do it in a ring. I'm going to build a ring. And I'm going to just so you can do this.
That's funny.
We appreciate you being here. We had a blast, actually. Lots of insightful stuff that, got from a different aspect other than, a wrestler's point of view.
It's all a matter of logic, Vinny.
Yeah.
Just what's logical and what works in entertainment in general.
Please, Gary, what are you working on? What are you promoting? Is there anything you would like to plug?
No, not really. No, I'm on Facebook at GMC for Real, the number 4, GMC for Real, and Twitter at Gary Capetta, Instagram at Gary Capetta. That's about it.
An awesome Luger vs. Sting Super Bowl 2 poster behind you. I remember watching that.
Thank you.
I have this habit of, like, even before we did this podcast, I would just put on a random WCW pay-per-view because, always bought WWE back in the day. I would put on a random, and that's one of the one I watched, and I went, that's really good. I can't believe I didn't order this back in the day.
When I finished with WCW, I had cases and cases of WCW pay-per-view posters. Brand new, never taken, never unsealed.
Wow.
If you have any more
conventions,
I'll buy them if you have any more.
I don't even know what's in my stock anymore. And I had tons of T-shirts, wrestlers T-shirts.
I'm wearing a Matt Hardy Mower of Lawn shirt. So, I'm all about wrestling shirts. I have about 40 shirts.
Nice.
I almost wore my Hulk Hogan Rip 'em shirt from No Holds Barred. But, Gary, this has been a pleasure. And please, again, please follow us at Front Face Lock on Twitter, Front Face Lock Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, Anchor.fm, Spotify, Apple Radio, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Vinny, you are
Vin Front Face LOK on Twitter.
Gary, this has been an honor. You're a legend. You should be in the Hall of Fame. I cannot say any more nice things about you. And you know what? We're going to do this again, and we're going to do it the way you want to do it, at a diner or a restaurant or something where it's a little different.
Yeah, we'll have a good time. Thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. And everybody, thanks for tuning in. And have a good night.